Okay, the idea here is that I'm going to trace the creation of a new object on the object bench in bluej using my notation. So here's a bluej project with a single class called rectangle. And the idea is I want to trace what happens when I right-click on rectangle and run this constructor. So there's two constructors for rectangle, a default constructor that takes no parameters, and then another constructor that takes two parameters, the width and the height of my rectangle, both doubles. So if I run that, I get a create object window, and I'm going to type, I want to call my new object small rectangle, and I'm going to set the width to be 3.0, oops, and the height to be 4.5, and I'm going to say OK. And now I get a new object on my bench called small rectangle. And what I want to do is I want to just trace, oops, there we go. I just want to trace what happens in here. Okay, so here's what my rectangle code actually looks like. I have two fields, a variable of type double called width and a variable of type double called height. And I have two constructors. Right here I'm just showing you the constructor that takes the two arguments, rect width and rect height, that are both of type double. Okay, and I'll show you this code again later as we need it. So the first piece of the setup is to just get a very big piece of paper. So there, we'll pretend that's my piece of paper. And you have to divide this piece of paper into 4 areas. So we're calling it bench, objects, terminal output, and scratch work. You just label your 4 areas like that. And again, here's the code for our class. We have a private double width, private double height. Those are the fields for our class. And there's the function, the method for running a new rectangle. We just say width gets rect width and height gets rect height, where rect width and rect height are our parameters that we've passed in. Okay, so step 1, if you want to create a new object, if you do what we just did, right-click on the object and create a new rectangle, you start out by creating a new box on the object bench with the name that you typed in as the name of your new instance of the class. So I called it small rectangle. And then you're going to actually also type in the name of its type, which of course is rectangle because it's the rectangle class. The last step here is you want to put an arrow in here that points to null, because right now this is a box that's going to point to our object eventually, but our object isn't built yet. Right now we haven't built a new object in here, so we need to put the object together using the constructor method, and then we'll point this arrow at the object. Okay, so it's time to call the constructor method. Here's the code for the constructor method. On our scratch paper, we're going to create what I call a new piece of scrap paper. It's fancy scrap paper, but it's scrap paper nonetheless. And we're going to write the name of the constructor right here. I put parentheses to indicate that it is a method, but I can't fit the parameters in there. But that's okay, because what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add some boxes on the scrap paper itself to show the formal names and types of the parameters. So I have 2 parameters here, right? My first parameter is called rect width of type double, rect width of type double. My second parameter is called rect height of type double, rect height of type double. Okay, we continue. The next thing you need to do is to copy the actual parameters that you put in when you right-clicked on that class and then ran the method into these formal boxes. So in my case, I put 3.0 in direct width and 4.5 in direct height, so those get copied down. And finally, we create a new object to represent our new rectangle that we're creating. We put it in the objects area. I put a little crown on all my objects to show they're very special. It's of type rectangle. The class name is rectangle. And when you look at my fields, I have 2 private variables. One is called width of type double. There's that. One is height of type double. And there's that. Okay, let's keep going. The next thing you do is you actually start to run your constructor method. So we start on the first line and we just go through it line by line. So we start here, width gets rect width. Now when you're running a constructor method, or any method for that matter, when you are looking for a variable, like in this case we evaluate the right-hand side, put the answer in the left, we evaluate rect width, we want to find the rect width variable and find out what its value is. We first look on the scratch paper for the method, and if we can't find it on the scratch paper, then we'll go and look in the object and see if perhaps there's a field with that name. So this says rect width. We look on the scrap paper, and sure enough there's a variable called rect width of value 3.0. We're going to put that 3.0 into the location called width. We look on the scrap paper, there's nothing called width, but we go back to the class and there is indeed a width. So we're going to copy that 3.0 up to width. There you go. Now we're on the next line of code. Similar, height gets rect height, evaluate the right-hand side, put it in the left. So we are going to evaluate rect height. We first look on our scrap paper. We have it, 4.5. We're going to put that into height. First look on our scrap paper, there's no box called height, so we look on our object, there is indeed a box called height, so we copy that down. Terrific. We're done the function. When you finish the function, you crumple up your piece of paper. We'll just represent that by drawing a little line through it. The paper's gone, all those variables are gone. And the final step is we're going to take this arrow and point it, instead of pointing it at null, which you recall means the space intentionally left blank, we've now got an object that small rectangle should point to that we built up using our constructor method. We're going to point this arrow over at the rectangle. Okay? And that's it. You're done.